A millionaire took his daughter to the park, and a little beggar shouted, "She's my twin sister." Richard Hamilton was a man who embodied the American dream. He had risen from humble beginnings, built a successful software company from the ground up, and amassed a considerable fortune. His home, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of Chicago, was a testament to his hard work and entrepreneurial spirit. But for all his material success, Richard carried a quiet sadness, a void that no amount of money could fill. His wife, Eleanor, had passed away from cancer 5 years earlier, leaving him to raise their daughter, Clara, alone. Clara, now 12 years old, was the center of Richard's world. She was a bright, sensitive girl with her mother's sparkling blue eyes and a gentle demeanor. She excelled at school, loved playing the piano, and had a passion for horses, spending hours at the local riding stables. Their life was one of privileged private schools, luxurious vacations, and a staff that catered to their every need. But it was also a life carefully curated by Richard to protect Clara from the harsh realities of the world. Their relationship, while loving, was also marked by a certain distance. Richard, still grieving the loss of his wife, struggled to fully connect with his daughter on an emotional level. He provided for her materially, ensuring she had every advantage, but he often found it difficult to express his feelings. To bridge the gap between his stoic exterior and the deep well of love he felt for her, he worked long hours, often traveling for business, leaving Clara in the care of a nanny, Mrs. Peterson, a kind and efficient woman who had been with the family since Clara was a baby. He justified his absences by telling himself he was working to secure Clara's future, to provide her with the best possible life. But he knew, deep down, that he was also running from the emptiness, from the silence of their large house, from the constant reminder of the woman he had lost. Clara, in turn, had learned to be self-sufficient, to occupy herself with her studies and her hobbies. She missed her mother terribly, and while she loved her father, she also yearned for a closer connection, for a deeper understanding. She often felt lonely, despite being surrounded by material comforts. She longed for a sibling, a friend, someone who could share her world and fill the void left by her mother's absence. Richard, aware of his shortcomings as a father, tried to compensate with lavish gifts and extravagant experiences. He showered Clara with presents, took her on expensive trips, and enrolled her in the best schools and extracurricular activities. He hoped that these material offerings would somehow make up for his emotional distance, for the time he couldn't give her, for the unspoken grief that hung heavy in their home. But he knew, deep down, that it wasn't enough. He was providing for her, but he wasn't truly present in her life. This subtle disconnect, this quiet yearning for something more, would set the stage for the extraordinary event that was about to shatter their carefully constructed world. Across the city, far from the manicured lawns and gated communities of Richard Hamilton's world, lived a girl named Lily. She was also 12 years old, but her life was a stark contrast to Clara's privileged existence. Lily lived with her mother, Maria, in a cramped, run-down apartment in one of Chicago's poorest neighborhoods. Maria worked long hours as a cleaning lady, scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets to make ends meet. She was a fierce, determined woman who had faced countless hardships in her life, but her love for Lily was her unwavering anchor, her driving force. She had come to America from Mexico as a young woman, seeking a better life, but the American dream had proven elusive. She had struggled with poverty, discrimination, and the constant fear of deportation. Lily, despite her difficult circumstances, was a bright and resilient girl. She had inherited her mother's dark eyes and her unwavering spirit. She was a good student, attending a struggling public school where resources were scarce and opportunities were limited. She had learned to be resourceful, to make the most of what she had, and to find joy in the simple things. She helped her mother with chores, cooking meals, and caring for their small apartment. She spent her free time reading, drawing, and dreaming of a better future. She had a few close friends, other children from her neighborhood who shared her struggles and her dreams. They would play in the streets, create their own games, and find moments of laughter and joy amidst the harsh realities of their lives. Lily was also acutely aware of the vast disparities between her world and the world of the wealthy. She would see the expensive cars driving through her neighborhood, the well-dressed families shopping in the upscale stores downtown, and the images of luxury and privilege splashed across television screens and magazine covers. She didn't resent their wealth. She simply yearned for a life where she didn't have to worry about food, rent, or her mother's safety. She often wondered about her father, a man she had never known. Maria had told her very little about him, only that he was an American, that he had been kind, and that he had left before Lily was born. She had a faded photograph of him, a handsome man with a gentle smile, and she would often stare at it, imagining what her life might have been like if he had stayed. Maria, despite her struggles, instilled in Lily a sense of dignity, self-worth, and hope. She taught her the importance of education, hard work, and kindness. She encouraged her to dream big, to believe in herself, and to never give up on her aspiration. She also taught her to be wary of strangers, to protect herself, and to never lose sight of her inner strength. Their life was a constant struggle, a daily battle against poverty and adversity. But they had each other, and their love, their resilience, and their unwavering hope were the forces that kept them going, the light that shone brightly in the darkness of their circumstances. This bond, forged in hardship, would be tested in ways they could never have imagined. The day that would forever alter the course of both Clara's and Lily's lives began like any other Saturday. Richard, feeling a pang of guilt for his recent absences, decided to take Clara to Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's largest and most beautiful parks. He hoped that a day outdoors, a chance to connect with nature, would help bridge the emotional distance between them. Clara, excited at the prospect of spending time with her father, dressed in her favorite jeans and a comfortable sweatshirt. She packed a book, a sketchbook, and a small picnic lunch, hoping for a day of relaxation and fun. They arrived at the park in Richard's sleek, black Mercedes, a stark contrast to the crowded buses and dilapidated cars that lined the surrounding streets. They found a quiet spot near the conservatory, spread out a blanket, and began to enjoy their lunch. Meanwhile, Lily and Maria had also decided to spend the day at Lincoln Park. It was a rare treat for them, a chance to escape the confines of their small apartment and enjoy the beauty of nature. Maria had packed a simple lunch of sandwiches and fruit, and Lily had brought along her worn-out copy of The Secret Garden, her favorite book. They found a spot near the playground, a bustling area filled with children laughing and playing. Lily, while enjoying the sunshine and the fresh air, couldn't help but notice the differences between herself and the other children. Their clothes were newer, their toys were fancier, and their parents seemed less burdened, less weighed down by the worries of the world. As she watched a group of girls playing jump rope, she noticed one girl in particular. She was about Clara's age, with long, blonde hair, dressed in designer clothes, and accompanied by a well-dressed man who Lily assumed was her father. There was something strikingly familiar about the girl's face, something that drew Lily's attention and held it captive. The girl, Clara, was sitting on a bench with her father, Richard, engaged in a somewhat stilted conversation. Richard was trying to connect with his daughter, asking about her schoolwork, her friends, her hobbies, but his questions felt forced, his attempts at conversation awkward. Clara, sensing her father's discomfort, answered his questions politely but briefly, her gaze drifting towards the playground, towards the other children, towards the girl who was staring at her with such intensity. Lily, emboldened by a sudden, inexplicable urge, stood up and walked towards the girl and her father. Her heart was pounding, her mind racing, a strange mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. As she approached them, she stopped a few feet away, her eyes fixed on Clara's face. The resemblance was undeniable. They could have been sisters, twins even. They had the same eyes, the same nose, the same shape of face. "Excuse me," Lily said, her voice trembling slightly. Richard and Clara looked up, startled by the interruption. Richard's initial reaction was one of annoyance, a reflex to protect his daughter from a stranger, a potential threat. "Yes," Richard said, his voice cool and distant. Lily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She pointed at Clara, her hand shaking. She looks just like me," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. She's my twin sister." The words hung in the air, shocking and improbable. Richard stared at Lily, his mind struggling to process her claim. Clara looked from Lily to her father, her expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. The carefully constructed world of privilege and protection that Richard had built around his daughter was about to be shattered by a single, desperate cry from a little beggar girl. Richard's initial reaction to Lily's claim was swift and dismissive. He saw a dirty, poorly dressed girl, clearly from a different world than his own, making an outrageous and obviously false statement. He assumed she was part of some sort of scam, a ploy to get money or attention. "That's ridiculous," he said, his voice sharp and condescending. "Clara doesn't have a twin sister. You're mistaken." He stood up, placing himself between Lily and Clara, a protective gesture meant to shield his daughter from this unwelcome intrusion. He looked at Lily with a mixture of annoyance and suspicion. "I suggest you leave us alone," he said firmly. "We're trying to enjoy our day." Lily, however, refused to be deterred. She stood her ground, her eyes locked on Clara's, a desperate plea in their depths. But we look the same," she insisted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Look at us. We could be twins." Clara, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Dad," she said, her voice hesitant, she does look a little like me." Richard glanced at his daughter, then back at Lily. He saw the resemblance, the undeniable similarities in their features. But he quickly dismissed it as a coincidence or random quirk of genetics. "Don't be silly, Clara," he said. "There are probably thousands of girls who look similar to you. It doesn't mean anything." He turned back to Lily, his expression hardening. "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave us alone," he said. "If you don't, I'll call security." Maria, who had been watching the scene unfold from a distance, now approached, her face etched with concern. She had heard Lily's claim, and while she knew it was impossible, she also saw the desperation in her daughter's eyes, the unwavering conviction in her voice. "What's going on here?" Maria asked, her voice cautious. Richard, exasperated, explained the situation, his tone dismissive and patronizing. He described Lily's claim as absurd and preposterous, making it clear that he considered the matter closed. Maria looked at Lily, then at Clara, then back at Richard. She saw the resemblance, the striking similarities that could not be easily dismissed. She also saw the fear in her daughter's eyes, the fear of being rejected, of being dismissed, of being invisible. "My daughter is not a liar," Maria said, her voice firm, her gaze unwavering. "She may be poor, but she is honest. She wouldn't make up something like this." Richard scoffed. "Look, I don't know what your game is," he said, "but I'm not going to stand here and listen to this nonsense. We're leaving." He took Clara's hand and started to walk away, pulling her along with him. Clara, however, hesitated. She looked back at Lily, her eyes filled with confusion and a growing sense of unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this encounter, that Lily's claim, however improbable, might hold a grain of truth. Lily, feeling defeated and heartbroken, watched them go. She wanted to run after them, to plead with them to listen, to believe her. But she knew it was futile. They were from different worlds, worlds that were separated by more than just wealth and privilege. As Richard and Clara walked away, a seed of doubt had been planted in Richard's mind. He couldn't completely dismiss Lily's claim, the striking resemblance, the desperate plea in her eyes. He tried to push it aside, to focus on his daughter, on their life, on the world he had carefully constructed. But the doubt lingered, a nagging feeling that he couldn't quite shake. It was a feeling that would eventually lead him to uncover a truth far more complex and shocking than he could have ever imagined. The encounter in the park, though brief, had left a lasting impression on Richard. He couldn't shake the image of Lily's face, her desperate plea, and the undeniable resemblance to Clara. He tried to dismiss it as a coincidence or random quirk of genetics, but the doubt lingered, gnawing at his conscience. He found himself thinking about Lily throughout the day, replaying the scene in his mind, analyzing every detail, every word. He tried to focus on his work, on his responsibilities, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the park, to the girl who claimed to be Clara's twin sister. That evening, after Clara was asleep, Richard found himself searching the internet. Typing in keywords like identical twins, separated at birth, and adoption scams, he scrolled through countless articles, stories, and forum posts, his mind racing with possibilities. He felt a growing sense of unease, a fear that he was on the verge of uncovering a truth that could shatter his carefully constructed world. He knew he couldn't ignore this feeling, this nagging doubt that had taken root in his mind. He needed to know the truth, however painful it might be. He owed it to Clara, to Lily, and to himself. The next morning, Richard made a decision. He would investigate Lily's claim, discreetly and thoroughly. He wouldn't tell Clara, not yet, not until he had more information. He didn't want to raise her hopes or cause her unnecessary distress. He started by contacting a private investigator, a man named Frank Miller, who had a reputation for being discreet, thorough, and relentless. He explained the situation to Miller, emphasizing the need for confidentiality and sensitivity. "I need you to find out everything you can about this girl, Lily," Richard said, handing Miller a photograph he had secretly taken of Lily and Maria in the park. "Her background, her family, her history. I need to know if there's any possibility, however remote, that she could be related to my daughter." Miller, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, listened intently, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. He assured Richard that he would handle the investigation with the utmost discretion and that he would leave no stone unturned. Richard also decided to do some investigating of his own. He started by reviewing Clara's birth certificate, her adoption records if any existed, this is a key plot point to be revealed later, and any other documents related to her early life. He searched through old files, boxes, and storage containers, hoping to find some clue, some piece of information that might shed light on the mystery. He remembered the early days of his marriage to Eleanor, their struggles with infertility, and their decision to consider adoption. He remembered the joy they had felt when they had finally brought Clara home, the overwhelming love they had felt for their precious baby girl. But he also remembered the secrecy surrounding the adoption process, the vague explanations, and the closed records. He realized that he knew very little about Clara's biological parents, about her origins, about the circumstances that had led to her adoption. He had trusted the agency, he had trusted the process, and he had never questioned the information he had been given. Now, he was questioning everything. He was beginning to suspect that he had been deliberately misled, that there were secrets hidden in his past, secrets that were now threatening to unravel his present. The investigation was just beginning, but Richard was already feeling a sense of dread, a premonition that the truth he was about to uncover would change his life forever. He had started down a path, and there was no turning back. Frank Miller, the private investigator, worked quickly and efficiently. He started by tracing Lily and Maria, identifying their address, their place of work, and their daily routines. He conducted background checks, interviewed neighbors, and gathered information from various sources. He discovered that Maria was indeed Lily's biological mother, that she had lived in Chicago her entire life, and that she had no known connection to Richard Hamilton or his family. He also confirmed that Lily had been born in the same hospital as Clara, almost on the same day. This seemingly insignificant detail piqued Miller's interest, and he decided to dig deeper. He focused his attention on the hospital, obtaining records through legal means, of course, of all births that had occurred around the time of Clara and Lily's birth. He meticulously reviewed the records, looking for any anomalies, any inconsistencies, any clues that might shed light on the mystery. He discovered that there had been a power outage at the hospital on the night Clara and Lily were born, a brief but significant disruption that had caused chaos and confusion in the maternity ward. He also discovered that several nurses and doctors who had been on duty that night had subsequently left the hospital, some under suspicious circumstances. Miller interviewed former hospital staff, tracking down individuals who had worked in the maternity ward during that time. He encountered resistance, evasion, and outright denial, but he persisted, using his skills of persuasion and his knowledge of the law to extract information. He finally found a former nurse, an elderly woman named Sarah Jenkins, a different Sarah from the earlier part, who was willing to talk. Sarah, haunted by guilt and remorse, confessed that she had witnessed something suspicious on the night of the power outage. She had seen a doctor, a man named Dr. Albert Finch, acting strangely, carrying a baby from one room to another, his face etched with anxiety. Sarah had reported her suspicions to her supervisor, but her concerns had been dismissed. Dr. Finch was a respected physician, a man with connections and influence, and the hospital administration had been reluctant to investigate. Sarah had been pressured to keep quiet, and she had eventually left the hospital, carrying the burden of her secret for years. Miller, realizing he was on the verge of a major breakthrough, contacted Detective Rossi, sharing his findings and requesting her assistance. He believed that Dr. Finch, who had since died, might have been involved in a baby-switching scheme, potentially separating twins at birth and selling one or both to unsuspecting parents. Detective Rossi, intrigued by Miller's findings, agreed to reopen the investigation into Clara's birth and the circumstances surrounding it. She obtained warrants to exhume Dr. Finch's remains and to conduct DNA testing on Clara, Lily, and Richard. The DNA tests confirmed the shocking truth: Clara and Lily were indeed identical twins. Richard was their biological father. The results also revealed that Anna, Richard's deceased wife, was not Clara's biological mother. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, revealing a complex and disturbing story of deception, betrayal, and a crime that had been hidden for over a decade. The clues, painstakingly uncovered, had led to a truth that would change the lives of everyone involved. The DNA results were irrefutable. Clara and Lily were identical twins, and Richard was their biological father. The revelation sent shockwaves through Richard's world, shattering his carefully constructed reality and forcing him to confront a past he had never known. Detective Rossi and Frank Miller pieced together the full story, a tragic tale of desperation, greed, and a callous disregard for human life. It turned out that Richard and Eleanor had not been able to conceive naturally. They had sought help from Dr. Finch, a fertility specialist with a seemingly impeccable reputation. However, Eleanor's health had deteriorated during the process, making carrying a child to term impossible. Unbeknownst to Richard, Eleanor, in her desperation for a child, had made a secret arrangement with Dr. Finch. Dr. Finch, it was revealed, was involved in a highly illegal and unethical operation. He was working with a network of individuals who trafficked in infants, separating twins at birth and selling them to wealthy and suspecting couples. Maria, young, poor, and vulnerable, had become pregnant with twins after a brief relationship with Richard, a relationship he had completely forgotten. A drunken one-night stand during a business trip to Chicago before he had even met Eleanor. Maria had been unaware of Richard's identity, and he had been unaware of her pregnancy. Dr. Finch, learning of Maria's pregnancy and her desperate situation, saw an opportunity. He approached Maria, offering her a substantial sum of money in exchange for one of her twins. He told her that the baby would be placed with a loving, wealthy family who could provide for her child in a way that Maria could not. Maria, facing overwhelming pressure and feeling she had no other choice, reluctantly agreed. She believed she was doing what was best for her child, giving her a chance at a better life. She never knew that the loving, wealthy family was, in fact, the biological father of her children, a man she had briefly known and then lost contact with. Dr. Finch had then orchestrated the switch, taking one of the twins, Lily, from Maria after the birth and presenting her to Eleanor as a child available for immediate, private adoption. He fabricated documents, falsified records, and covered his tracks, ensuring that the truth would remain hidden. Eleanor, desperate for a child, and believing Finch, paid him a large sum, and they took baby Clara home. Eleanor, due to her ill health and the heavy medication she was taking, never realized that the adoption wasn't completely legitimate. She died believing Clara was adopted through the proper channels. Richard, grieving the loss of his wife and focused on raising Clara, had never questioned the circumstances of her birth. He had trusted Dr. Finch, he had trusted the system, and he had never suspected the monstrous deception that had taken place. The truth, when it finally emerged, was a devastating blow. Richard was forced to confront the fact that he had unknowingly fathered twins, that one of his daughters had been stolen from her mother, and that his own wife, however desperate she had been complicit in a terrible crime. The carefully constructed narrative of his life, the story he had told himself and Clara, was a lie. The revelation forced a complete reevaluation of his past, his marriage, and his understanding of who he was. The truth, while liberating in some ways, was also profoundly painful, forcing him to grapple with a legacy of deception and loss. The revelation of the truth brought a whirlwind of emotions for everyone involved. Richard, overwhelmed with guilt, grief, and a profound sense of responsibility, reached out to Maria and Lily. He arranged a meeting, a tentative and emotionally charged encounter, filled with tears, apologies, and a shared sense of disbelief. Maria, initially wary and distrustful, was hesitant to meet Richard. She had carried the pain of losing her daughter for years, blaming herself, and harboring a deep resentment towards the known father who had abandoned her. But she also recognized the opportunity for Lily, the chance for her daughter to have a better life, a life free from poverty and hardship. She agreed to the meeting, driven by a mother's love and a desire to do what was best for her child. The meeting took place at Richard's home, a setting that was both intimidating and overwhelming for Maria and Lily. Richard, humbled and remorseful, apologized to Maria for his past actions, for his unwitting role in the separation of her daughters. He expressed his profound regret, his sorrow, and his determination to make amends. Maria, her voice trembling with emotion, spoke of her struggles, her pain, and her unwavering love for Lily. She described the years of hardship, the constant worry, and the gnawing fear that she had made the wrong decision. Lily, initially quiet and withdrawn, gradually began to open up. She looked at Richard, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. She asked him questions about her father, about her sister, about the life she had never known. Clara, who had been present during the meeting, was initially stunned and confused. She had grown up believing she was an only child, and the sudden appearance of a twin sister, a girl who looked exactly like her, was a surreal and disorienting experience. She listened to the story of her birth, of the deception, of the stolen child, her mind struggling to process the enormity of the revelation. She felt a mixture of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and a growing sense of empathy for Lily, for the sister she had never known. As the initial shock subsided, a tentative bond began to form between Clara and Lily. They started to talk, to share stories, to discover the similarities and differences in their personalities, their interests, their lives. They found a connection, a shared history, a sisterhood that had been denied to them for so long. Richard, watching his daughters interact, felt a surge of hope, a sense of redemption. He knew that he could never fully undo the past, that he could never erase the pain he had caused, but he was determined to build a future where his daughters could know each other, love each other, and support each other. It was arranged that a lawyer to help in the situation, and Richard was completely willing to do anything to make up for his mistakes. He offered Maria financial support, a new home, and the best possible education for Lily. He promised to be a father to both of his daughters, to be present in their lives, and to make amends for the years of separation. The confrontation was difficult, the acceptance gradual, but the seeds of a new family had been planted, a family born out of tragedy, but nurtured by love, forgiveness, and a shared determination to build a better future. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and that was a start. The integration of Lily into the Hamilton family was a gradual and complex process, filled with challenges, adjustments, and moments of profound joy. It was a journey of discovery, of healing, and of forging new bonds of family and love. Lily, initially overwhelmed by the opulence and privilege of Richard's world, struggled to adjust to her new surroundings. She felt like an outsider, a stranger in a strange land, unsure of her place in this new family. She missed her mother, her friends, and the familiarity of her old life. Clara, while welcoming and kind, also struggled with the sudden shift in her family dynamic. She had always been an only child, the center of her father's attention, and she now had to share that attention with a sister she had never known. She felt a mixture of excitement, curiosity, and a subtle sense of jealousy. Richard, determined to make amends for the past, went to great lengths to make Lily feel welcome and loved. He enrolled her in the same private school as Clara, provided her with her own room, decorated to her taste, and showered her with gifts and attention. But he also understood that material comforts were not enough, that Lily needed time, patience, and understanding to adjust to her new life. Maria, while grateful for Richard's generosity, remained wary and protective of Lily. She insisted on being involved in all decisions regarding her daughter's upbringing, and she made it clear that she would not tolerate any form of discrimination or mistreatment. She also worked to maintain a strong connection with Lily, ensuring that she did not lose her roots, her culture, or her sense of identity. The biggest challenge was bridging the cultural and social gap between the two girls. Clara had grown up in a world of privilege, surrounded by wealth and opportunity. Lily had grown up in poverty, facing hardship and adversity at every turn. They had different perspectives, different values, and different ways of seeing the world. They clashed at times, arguing over trivial things, misunderstanding each other's intentions, and struggling to find common ground. But they also learned from each other, sharing their experiences, their perspectives, and their dreams. Clara learned about the realities of poverty, the struggles of working-class families, and the importance of social justice. Lily learned about the opportunities that wealth could provide, the importance of education, and the power of privilege. They began to appreciate each other's strengths, to respect each other's differences, and to build a bond of sisterhood that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. They became each other's confidants, sharing secrets, supporting each other through difficult times, and celebrating each other's successes. The family also faced legal hurdles. The separation of the twins and the circumstances surrounding Clara's adoption were investigated by Child Protective Services. There were questions about Maria's parental rights, about Richard's legal claim to Lily, and about the potential for criminal charges against those involved in the original deception. With the help of skilled lawyers, and with Richard's full cooperation, the legal issues were eventually resolved. Maria retained her parental rights, but agreed to share custody with Richard. Lily officially became a member of the Hamilton family, with all the rights and privileges that entailed. The individuals responsible for the original separation, though deceased, their action had left a long-lasting impact and was recorded by the police. The new family, forged in the crucible of adversity, was not perfect. It was complex, challenging, and constantly evolving. But it was also a family built on love, forgiveness, and a shared determination to create a better future. Years passed, and the Hamilton family blossomed. The wounds of the past, though still present, had begun to heal, replaced by a growing sense of love, understanding, and a shared commitment to building a future together. Clara and Lily, once strangers, had become inseparable sisters. They had navigated the challenges of their blended family, overcome their differences, and forged a bond that was stronger than any blood tie. They supported each other through thick and thin, celebrating each other's successes and offering comfort during times of difficulty. Clara, following in her mother's footsteps, pursued a career in medicine, specializing in pediatric oncology. She was driven by a desire to help children, to ease their suffering, and to give back to the community that had supported her family through their darkest hours. Lily, inspired by her mother's resilience and her own experiences with poverty, pursued a career in social work, dedicating her life to helping marginalized communities and fighting for social justice. She became a powerful advocate for the rights of children, working to ensure that no child would ever have to endure the trauma and separation that she had experienced. Richard, transformed by the events of the past, became a more present and engaged father. He learned to express his emotions, to communicate openly with his daughters, and to prioritize their needs above his own. He also became a philanthropist, using his wealth and influence to support organizations that help children and families in need. He established a foundation in Eleanor and Maria's names, dedicated to providing resources and support for single mothers and children from low-income backgrounds. Maria, while initially hesitant to accept Richard's help, eventually came to appreciate his genuine remorse and his commitment to making amends. She found a new sense of purpose in working with the foundation, sharing her experiences, and helping other mothers overcome the challenges she had faced. She also found love again, marrying a kind and supportive man who embraced both her and Lily as his own. The family, though unconventional, was a testament to the power of forgiveness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring bonds of love. They celebrated holidays together, shared milestones, and supported each other through life's inevitable ups and downs. They had learned to navigate their complex relationships, to appreciate their differences, and to cherish the unique bond that united them. Many years later, Richard Hamilton, now an elderly man, sat on the porch of his Chicago home, surrounded by his family. Clara, now a successful pediatric oncologist, was there with her husband and 2 children. Lily, a prominent social worker and advocate for children's rights, was there with her partner and their adopted daughter. Maria, her hair streaked with silver but her eyes still sparkling with the same fierce determination, sat beside Richard, holding his hand. They were celebrating Lily's daughter's 10th birthday, a joyous occasion filled with laughter, love, and a profound sense of gratitude. As Richard watched his grandchildren play, their faces radiant with happiness, he felt a deep sense of peace, a contentment that had eluded him for much of his life. He had made mistakes, terrible mistakes, that had caused immense pain and suffering. He could never fully erase the past, but he had spent the intervening years trying to make amends, to build a better future for his daughters and his grandchildren. He had learned the true meaning of family, the importance of love, forgiveness, and the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the gathering, Lily approached her father, a gentle smile on her face. She knelt beside him, taking his hand in hers. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything. For finding me, for loving me, for giving me a family." Richard squeezed her hand, tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You changed my life. You taught me the true meaning of love, of forgiveness, of family. You saved me." Clara joined them, placing her hand on her father's shoulder. "We're a family, Dad," she said. "A complicated family, maybe, but a family nonetheless. And we're all in this together." Richard looked at his daughters, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He had found redemption, not in escaping the consequences of his past, but in facing them, in accepting responsibility, and in dedicating his life to making amends. He had built a new family, a family forged in adversity, but strengthened by love, forgiveness, and a shared commitment to a brighter future. The story of the millionaire's daughter and the beggar girl who turned out to be twins was a story of loss and discovery, of pain and healing, of betrayal and forgiveness. It was a story that had begun in darkness, but it had ended in light, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and to find hope, even in the most unlikely of circumstances. And as Richard sat there, surrounded by his loved ones, he knew that he was finally, truly, home. The circle was complete, the past was reconciled, and the future, though uncertain, was filled with the promise of love, family, and a legacy of good that would extend far beyond his own lifetime.